Picture this. You're standing in your local grocery store, maybe it's a Kroger in Ohio or a Loblaws in Ontario, and the shelves are half empty. Not because of a panic buy, not because of a snowstorm, but because the trucks just aren't coming anymore. Your debit card works fine, your bank account shows a balance, but money means absolutely nothing when there's nothing left to buy. Sound like a movie? It's not. Right now, 13.5% of American households can't reliably afford meals. Canadian food banks are seeing working families, people with jobs, lining up because groceries cost more than their paychecks can cover, and this is happening while everything still technically works. So here's the question nobody's asking. What if the key to surviving the next decade isn't your savings account, your 401k, or even your emergency fund? What if it's a mason jar full of seeds sitting in your basement? Today I'm breaking down 9 reasons why seeds could genuinely outvalue cash in the near future. These aren't doomsday fantasies. These are economic realities already playing out. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why your backyard might be a better investment than the stock market. Let's get into it. Reason 9, global food flows are collapsing. The Russia-Ukraine war didn't just happen over there. It slashed over 25% of global wheat exports overnight, and that shortage rippled straight to your grocery bill. In the US, port strikes and trade tariffs drove food prices up sharply. In Canada, wildfires and export disruptions made basics like grain significantly more expensive. Here's what that actually means. When bread baskets burn or get blockaded, international trade grinds to a halt. Your money can't magic food onto empty shelves. But seeds, you plant them in your own soil and you're completely immune to the chaos. You're not dependent on Ukrainian wheat or California almonds or Chilean grapes. You're producing your own calories. Think about that for a second. Self-sufficiency in a world that's fracturing. Who wouldn't trade for that ability? Reason 8. Your dollar is dying faster than you think. Venezuela's hyperinflation turned cash into literal confetti. People were using stacks of bills as napkins because they were worthless. And what saved the people who survived? Backyard gardens. They stopped relying on money and started growing food. Now look at your own situation. US food costs have stayed elevated, with volatility pushing prices higher than general inflation in most months. The World Bank found that food price inflation outpaced overall inflation rates in 2/3 of countries with data. Canada's seeing the same thing, food costs rising faster than wages, pushing employed families to food banks for the first time in their lives. When your dollar buys less bread every single month, fiat currency starts feeling fragile. But seeds, they're exponential wealth. One seed becomes a plant. That plant produces 50 seeds. Those 50 produce thousands. It's infinite and inflation-proof. While your savings account loses 3% to inflation annually, seeds multiply their value every growing season. Reason 7. Food inflation is outpacing everything. The FAO Food Price Index remains elevated and volatile compared to pre-COVID levels. Even after some declines, it's still well above long-term averages. Translation: food is getting expensive faster than almost anything else you buy. If food prices outrun your currency, which they are, then seeds that turn dirt and water into calories are basically a hedge against your own grocery bill. In North America, this means your staples cost more every year while wages stagnate. Your cash is shrinking, seeds are growing, literally. They're one of the only investments ordinary people can make that pays dividends in actual calories you can eat. Reason 6. Corporations are weaponizing seeds. 4 corporations control 60% of global seed supply, and many of those seeds are engineered so they don't reproduce, forcing you to rebuy every single year. In the US, antitrust probes have highlighted the monopolization issue, but nothing's changed. Seeds remain controlled, and costs keep rising for independent farmers. Canada's facing similar consolidation. Fewer options for resilient varieties. Less genetic diversity. More dependence on corporate supply chains. Here's the scenario that should terrify you. What happens when a disruption cuts that supply? Patented seeds vanish overnight because nobody can reproduce them. But heirloom seeds you saved from last year's harvest, those are yours forever. You can plant them, trade them, give them to neighbors. They're completely outside the corporate control system. And did you know that in a real shortage scenario, a packet of viable seeds could be worth more than a tank of gas? Because gas gets you somewhere once. Seeds feed you for decades. Reason 5. We've lost 75% of crop diversity. Since 1900, we've eliminated 3/4 of crop genetic diversity. We're relying on a handful of mega varieties that all have the same vulnerabilities. It's the Irish potato famine scenario on a global scale. In California, droughts or Canadian prairie wildfires, these uniform crops fail spectacularly, spiking prices nationwide. US yields are already dropping from heat waves. Canada's facing shorter growing seasons and more extreme weather. The crops bred for industrial agriculture can't adapt fast enough. But diverse heirloom seeds, they adapt and thrive because they've been selected over generations for resilience. Money is replaceable. You can print more. Lost genetics aren't replaceable at all. Once a variety goes extinct, it's gone forever. A well-chosen collection of seeds is basically a portable library of agricultural evolution. Reason 4. Climate chaos is already hammering yields. NASA warns that maize yields could plummet significantly in coming decades, but the extremes are hitting right now. Floods in the US Midwest, heat domes in Canada wilting wheat fields, food insecurity is rising sharply even in developed countries. When global production drops, import prices explode. Your local grocery costs spike even if your region had a decent harvest, because prices are set globally. But locally adapted seeds, they weather the specific storms your region faces. They're bred for your soil, your climate, your growing season. Cash can't fix a failed harvest when there's nothing to buy at any price, but seeds adapted to your local conditions are insurance against climate chaos. They're your personal agricultural policy that pays out in food when everything else fails. Reason 3. Markets break during real crises. We've already seen export bans on grains and fertilizers during recent price spikes. Governments blocked shipments to protect their own populations. International trade just stopped for critical goods. In actual breakdowns, cash gets trapped while essential goods don't move. Look at war zones. Money exists, bank accounts have balances, but supply chains and logistics collapse completely. That's what a barter economy looks like in practice. Currency is technically there, but essentials only move through trusted personal networks. Seeds don't get trapped in logistics failures. They don't require international shipping or functioning payment systems. They turn your yard, your balcony, or your field into a local printing press for calories. You're producing food that never needs to enter the broken supply chain. Reason 2. History is screaming at us. During the siege of Leningrad, scientists literally starved to death protecting seed banks. They had food in their hands, potato varieties, grain samples, and they refused to eat them even as they died of hunger. That's how valuable they understood those genetics to be for future survival. Closer to home, during the Great Depression, Americans foraged and grew victory gardens to survive. After the Soviet collapse, Cuban urban gardens fed millions when imports vanished overnight. In every modern crisis, urban agriculture exploded because industrial food systems failed. And did you know that right now, with ongoing supply chain issues exposing our vulnerabilities, we're seeing the exact same pattern? Seed companies are reporting unprecedented demand. People are converting lawns into gardens. The parallels to past collapses are uncomfortably close. Seeds ensured continuity then, they'll do it now. The people who survived past crises weren't the ones with the most cash. They were the ones who could produce their own food. Reason 1. The UN is sounding a global red alert. This is the gut punch that should wake everyone up. The Global Report on Food Crises reveals that over 295 million people faced acute food insecurity in 2024. The World Food Program calls it a global hunger crisis, with numbers nearly tripling in recent years. The November 2025 Hunger Hotspots report warns that acute food insecurity is deepening in 16 hotspots worldwide, threatening millions more with famine-level risks from conflicts, climate shocks, and economic collapse. Now you might think, that's Africa, that's the Middle East, that's not here. Wrong. Even in stable North America, this means drastically more expensive imports and strained food aid systems. When the global pinch point isn't cash, it's calories, the scarce commodity becomes the seeds that create those calories. When experts at this level sound alarms, ignoring them is financial suicide. Seeds aren't just a hedge against inflation or supply chain issues. They're your personal shield against systemic collapse. Here's what makes this whole situation so wild. It's all interconnected. Your rising grocery bill isn't separate from wars in Ukraine or droughts in California or export bans in India. It's all one global system, and that system is breaking down in real time. Seeds aren't just cheap insurance. They're future-proof wealth that generates returns regardless of what happens to currency, governments, or supply chains. While everyone else is worried about their stock portfolio or crypto holdings, the people who understand what's coming are quietly stockpiling genetics. Even Hollywood's been whispering this. In The Big Short movie, Brad Pitt's character, based on real Wall Street trader Ben Hockett, basically walks away from finance and says seeds are going to be the new currency.
Restore the soil, creates ammonium nitrate. Seeds are going to be the new currency. And not those Franken seeds from Monsanto. I'm talking about good, healthy, organic seeds. Make yourself a garden. Learn to live off the land.
And in the real world, governments have literally built an Arctic doomsday vault to lock away 1.3 million seed samples, while a tiny handful of corporations and billionaires quietly buy up farmland and control huge chunks of the seed market. They're not stupid. They're betting that, in the long run, control of food and genetics matters more than whatever numbers are flashing on a stock screen. And you probably already knew this, but Bill Gates is now the single largest private owner of farmland in America, and his foundation has been pouring money into seed genetics and crop diversity for years. Think about this. When the richest man in America becomes the largest private owner of U.S. farmland, and his foundation spends over $1 billion backing seed genetics and resilient crop systems, it's a signal. The elite aren't betting on tech anymore. They're betting on food now. So let me ask you directly, what's your plan when the grocery store shelves stay empty for more than a week? When your cash works fine but there's nothing to buy? When food becomes the most valuable commodity and you have no way to produce it? Because here's the reality that nobody wants to say out loud. We're closer to that scenario than most people realize. The systems we take for granted, just-in-time delivery, global supply chains, stable food prices, those are luxuries of a specific historical moment. And that moment is ending. The people who see this coming aren't panicking. They're preparing quietly. They're learning to grow food. They're saving seeds. They're building the skills that actually matter when complex systems fail. You don't need an acreage. You don't need to become a farmer. You need a few packets of heirloom seeds, some basic knowledge, and the willingness to start learning now instead of waiting until it's too late. Drop a comment and tell me, what's the first seed variety you'd stockpile, and why? Are you thinking potatoes for calories, tomatoes for vitamins, beans for protein? Let's talk about actual food security strategy. And if this video made you rethink what wealth actually means in an unstable world, subscribe. The next video breaks down exactly which seed varieties to prioritize and where to source genetics that aren't corporate controlled. Stay ahead of the curve. Your future self will thank you.